The Israel Summit, a massive pro-Israel event in Dallas, Texas, has been canceled after planners received numerous jihadist threats. Well, Luke Hilton, one of the event's organizers, joins us now. So, Luke, give us the facts on the ground. What actually happened?
Hey, Raj, thank you so much for having me. I flew in from Israel to Dallas, Texas just 2 days ago to prepare for our upcoming Israel Summit set to happen June 9th through 11th here in Dallas next week. And as people may have heard, we had to move from the original venue to a second venue because of growing security concerns here in the United States. Many people know the Washington, D.C. attack that happened a couple of weeks ago left two Jews dead. And then just a couple of days ago, there was another attack in Boulder, Colorado. So anything having to do with the Jewish community in America, anything having to do with Israel, there's a massive security concern. So we moved from the original venue that was in Arlington, Texas, to another private facility just outside of Dallas. And unfortunately, late last night, the security threats grew even more to the point to where the Israel Summit, our organization, and the venue that was hosting us received direct and indirect threats. There were groups of jihadi Americans. I mean, honestly, there's nothing else to call them because this is now spreading all across America, calling to target, quote, target the Israel Summit and to target the venue and the organization that was hosting us. And unfortunately, because of this, there was just no other option except to indefinitely postpone next week's Israel Summit. What it feels like is that Jews and Christians can no longer gather publicly in support of Israel and America. Honestly, that as crazy as that sounds, that's exactly what it feels like right now.
Wow. And to your point about what happened in DC, what happened in Boulder, what do you think this says about the state of anti-Semitism in the United States?
You know, it's hard to believe that we're at this point. Our security director, who is working with us for the event next week, his father fought in World War II, and he said, honestly, it feels like Germany in 1939.
Wow.
As crazy as that sounds, like to think about the idea that we try to have a simple pro-Israel event. We're talking about a peaceful gathering, 600 people in Dallas, Texas, of all places. And the goal is simply to educate people to stand publicly, peacefully in support of Israel. Just the fact that we cannot have an event like that in America today, Texas of all places, like where, and honestly, this is a question I'm asking myself. What does that mean for the state of America today? What does that mean for the levels of anti-Semitism that we're seeing today?
Wow, that is horrifying. I spent a lot of my life standing with Israel and the Jewish people, and I naively thought this couldn't happen here, and man, was I wrong. I've been to Israel 30 times. I've done a lot of research for myself, so I'm able to, see lies. Even like what we talked about recently with the BBC and Al Jazeera talking about, Israel indiscriminately firing upon Gaza aid distribution centers. But by the time the retraction comes, it's too late. So as someone yourself who has dedicated, and you live in Jerusalem, what are some lies, half-truths, things that you want to dispel that maybe would help people have a more nuanced, contextualized understanding of what's happening in Israel?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I live in Israel today. I've been inside of Gaza since October 7th, just last year. Went to the Philadelphia corridor, saw the 200 tunnels running underneath the corridor there, saw the state of affairs up close and personal. You just mentioned the latest lie that hit the mainstream media that said IDF opens fire on Gaza civilians. Obviously, 100% fabrication. Hamas opened fire, killing, I think, 21 Gazan civilians. But the world doesn't know that because it went out, that fake news and propaganda circled the globe. I'll give you an example from the area and the work that I'm involved in Israel. I live in a place called Samaria, which some people, know is Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, but most people know it as the West Bank. Some people have heard it called the occupied territories. And honestly, its terminology is what's key here because the real name is Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. And that is an area that's considered the biblical heartland of Israel. And I have friends, some coming to the Israel Summit next week, who are Jews living in Judea. But what the world wants people to believe is that these guys are radical extremist settlers living in the West Bank. Those two things exactly the same. peaceful, God-loving, family-oriented Jewish men and women and children living in Judea, living in Samaria, living in Jerusalem. But the world wants you to believe these are radical, extremist, hateful settlers living in the occupied West Bank. That's just one example. We could go on and on. Obviously, so many from the war. It's just so interesting that the opposite of what the world wants you to believe about Israel and the Jewish people is usually true. When you see something on social media or the mainstream media, the last statistic I heard is that for every one pro-Israel view on TikTok, there's 50 pro-Hamas or anti-Israel views on TikTok. And I mean, that just tells you the lies and the propaganda that, is filling social media in our world today.
I got involved in the Israel space for kind of geopolitical reasons, right? It's the one place in the Middle East that women have equal rights. It's the one place in the Middle East that, religious minorities really are protected. It's the one place in the Middle East that's a true democracy. But this is a Christian network. And I don't think you can fully understand this outside of understanding God's covenant with Israel and the Jewish people. People are like, well, why the Jews? Why is this anti-Semitism? And I think the existence of Israel is a giant certificate on your maps that the God of Abraham, Isaac, I'm getting emotional. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob keeps his covenants, keeps his promises, and there's nothing that hell can do to stop it. Whew, sorry.
Man, yeah, no, you're 100% right. Yeah.
And people say, well, all these lies, like Jesus is Palestinian. It's like, listen, I have more Palestinian friends than my friend who's making that comment could ever have. That's just factually not true. It wasn't called Palestine when Jesus was around. He was born in Judea, in the tribe of Judah. He was a Jewish rabbi who followed the Torah. It's just like, there's just so many things, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a heart for the Palestinian people. I mean, when Yasser Arafat died, how many billions of dollars was in a Swiss bank account? Do you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I just read about this.
There's just so many contextual things that I think is missing here. And these lies, these half-truths. And the thing is like, this isn't new. This happened in Nazi Germany. This happened in the Spanish Inquisition. This happened in the Crusades. This happened in Egypt with Pharaoh. This happened with the Assyrians. This happened with the Romans. And to me, all of those empires and all of those civilizations and all of those fanatical, tyrannical governments and kings don't exist anymore. And yet the Jewish people are back in the same land, using the same language, using the same currency, worshiping the same God on the same hill. Because why? Because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob keeps his promises, and there's nothing that the gates of hell can do to stop that. Listen, I have my criticisms of Israel. I have my criticisms of the United States. That's totally cool. No, you want to talk about people that criticize Israel? Talk to Israelis, man. They can't stand what Netanyahu's doing or whatever. That's totally kosher. But this obsession, this hatred for Israel and the Jewish people, that is demonic. I stand on that. I don't care if that makes me an editorial news reporter. That is where I stand. And so Luke, I pray that this thing never happens. And I pray that us in the West would realize that an event in Dallas, Texas, standing with Israel and the Jewish people being canceled is not okay. I will get off my soapbox. I don't know where that came from. But Luke, I'll give you the last
I'll just add to that. And you're 100% right. Like you said, I don't know why, especially anybody that claims to believe the Bible or be a believer in God. I don't know how anybody could go against God's people and God's land, because like you said, they've survived centuries, thousands of years of persecution. They're still here. The miraculous signs and wonders and prophecy being fulfilled in the land of Israel today, there's no clearer sign that there's a God in the world. And what I like to tell people is that, and this applies exactly to our event being canceled in Dallas, Texas, is because this is not over. This is not a defeat. We're going to have a better, bigger future event, another Israel summit somewhere in America where people are not afraid to gather publicly in support of Israel. What I tell people is, yes, God made a promise and a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that promise and covenant is still true today. And the world is going to continue to come against Israel and the Jewish people. The world is going to continue to come against God. Some people, even in the name of God, in the name of Christianity. But as believers in the Bible and in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we have the opportunity to participate in the blessing that God gave to the Jewish people. And it's our choice. We're either going to choose to be a part of it or choose to be not. And that choice is very, it could not be more clear in America today.
Yep. Let me end with this. Sorry, I meant to give you the last word, but there's something that's just on my heart to say, which is criticizing Israel is what we do. That's fine. Totally kosher. Criticize Israel, criticize the United States. That's fine. but this demonic obsession. You can choose to be on the side of Pharaoh, on the side of Sennacherib, on the side of Nebuchadnezzar, on the side of Hitler and Haman, on the side of the Spanish Inquisition, on the side of the Russian pogroms. History says that it doesn't go well for them. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to realize that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is alive and he is active,
Right.
and not to miss that. And as a Gentile follower of Yeshua, I'm not Jewish. Man, we get to celebrate that. We get to celebrate that our
Right.
God keeps his promises and keeps his covenants. Luke, I I did not intend for this to become a podcast, but I'm infuriated that this kind of thing has happened in the United States. I will not stand for it, and I pray that you feel strengthened and you feel his shalom as you move forward. So, Luke, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you so much.